Hanoka is an ordinary high school student who has accepted that he will never have a girlfriend because he is neither cool, rich, nor smart. One day, however, everything changes when he gets involved with magic and monsters. This does not happen because of a typical ice sky accident, but because of the prettiest girl in school. Hanoka discovers that meeting the principal can lead to more than just a ticket. He ends up getting close to the principal's daughter, Ayaka. The only connection between the two is that they take the same bus and sit next to each other in class. Even so, they have never exchanged a word, living in completely different worlds. Ayaka is surrounded by classmates all the time, while Hanoka is almost invisible. One day, he drops his eraser, and Ayaka returns it. This is enough to anger the members of her fan club, who drag him out of the room, throw him on the floor and beat him, telling him that he must never make the princess bow down for his sake again. After that, Hanoka goes to the teacher's lounge to help with the day's homework, but a girl appears and takes the papers out of his hand. She is not interested in him, but just wants to get him away because Ayaka is also on duty that day. Hanoka's routine consists of being an extra in Ayaka's story. After school, he goes downstairs to throw out the trash and begins to reflect on his life. At that moment, he finds a strange stuffed rabbit in the trash with a message on its body saying that the weather will be clear, but that some buildings may fall. He thinks it is just a silly joke until he sees the shadow of a building forming on the ground. He looks up and sees the clock tower falling on him. Before he is crushed, he thinks that maybe he will end up in another world as a hero, but regrets never having held a girl's hand. The tower falls, and he believes he has died. But then, he wakes up in the arms of Ayaka, who is wearing a witch's uniform. He panics when he realizes that they are floating in the air on a broomstick. From afar, a girl with cat ears watches and summons two armed rabbit-shaped toy soldiers. Ayaka throws Hanoka into the air, dodges the attack, burns the enemies with a fire spell, and holds him back in her arms like in a fairy tale. The soldiers get back up and attack again, but she fights them off with spells and broomstick blows. Ayaka asks Hanoka to stay close, but he does the opposite and runs towards the girl with cat ears, thinking she is Ayaka's friend. He is surrounded by the soldiers, trapped and forced to kneel. One of them approaches with an axe. Before the blow can happen, Ayaka appears and burns them all, saving Hanoka. He still believes he is dreaming, and says that she is too beautiful to care about him. Ayaka claims that she is just fulfilling her mission and says that she will protect him. When he asks why, she answers that it is because he is her princess. Hanoka is confused, wondering if she meant that he is a girl. Ayaka tells him not to worry and to just let her take care of him. Hanoka notices that part of Ayaka's hair was burned while protecting him. He feels guilty for being reckless, but soon realizes that he is starting to fall in love with her. As he thinks about this, he sees one of the soldiers getting up to attack her from behind. He throws himself in front of her and takes the blow, wanting to appear brave, but he faints before he can say anything. Ayaka carefully holds him, furious at seeing him injured, and uses a spell called Million Clover to finish off all the enemies at once. Later, Hanoka wakes up in Ayaka's private room inside the school. She explains that everything was real and that she will tell him the details later, but for now, they should go home. Walking together, she tells him that it is her duty to protect him because he is her master. Hanoka does not understand what this means, but just walks beside her in silence. Days later, everything seems to have returned to normal, but now Hanoka starts to attract attention when Ayaka sits with him on the morning bus. When they arrive at school, they walk together to class, and he feels like he's going to be attacked again if he stays by her side. Pretending to have a stomachache, he runs away, but is caught by the group of bullies. They threaten to attack him again, but Ayaka appears, tells them to let Hanoka go, fixes his tie into a bow, and warns that she'll burn anyone who tries to hurt him again. At lunchtime, she sits with Hanoka and other girls from the fan club, feeding him with her own hands and saying that she was the one who prepared the food. Despite feeling good about the gesture, Hanoka realizes that she is bothering the other girls. He gets up and says he will eat alone, running away. Ayaka gets angry at this and sets everyone's lunch on fire. As he walks through the courtyard, Hanoka notices that everything is back to normal and nothing seems to be destroyed. At that moment, he comes across the girl with cat ears. She reveals that the building falling was an illusion and confirms that he is an idiot for coming to her without realizing anything. As she transforms into a witch, she introduces herself as Tampopo, one of the witches of the tower. Tampopo says that she is there to kidnap Hanoka and then summons her soldiers. But Ayaka arrives in the middle of the way and takes Hanoka with her. Tampopo says that he has been waiting for this moment and orders his army of toy soldiers to attack them. This time, they are not just some ordinary toys, and they all advance with spears and swords from all sides. After the confrontation, Hanoka wakes up on the ground and notices that Ayaka is covering her body, with more wounds than he can count. Ayaka asks him if he's okay, and he's surprised to see her still alive. He feels sad for being so weak and says that he believes her, but that he needs to call an ambulance. Ayaka tells him that if he wants to make up for it, he has to promise not to run away during lunch the next day. Hanoka agrees and mentions that she's bleeding a lot, but she explains that she's made of fire and that everything is fine. Ayaka asks him to close his eyes and stay still. She uses her magic to throw all the soldiers into the air and burns them until they turn to ash. Then she walks towards Tampopo carrying Hanoka in her arms. She casts a powerful fire spell, but Tampopo summons his soldiers and narrowly escapes, with his body partially on fire. After that, Ayaka asks Hanoka to open her eyes, and he's surprised to see that everything is back to normal, as if nothing had happened. Then, they walk back home and call it a day. The next morning, 5 new students transfer to the school. They are Tampopo and other witches from the tower. A few days pass and Hanoka continues to ask Ayaka about all of this, wanting to understand why he is being persecuted. One morning, he decides to persist until he gets answers, but notices that Ayaka did not take the same bus as him. When he arrives at school, he changes his shoes and walks to his classroom, but finds Ayaka in a strange room, interacting with the new students intensely. He looks at the board on the door and realizes that he is in the Torture Society Club. Instead of wondering why a club like that exists, he tries to understand how he ended up there. Ayaka explains that she cast a spell so that he would unconsciously come to that room instead of the classroom, so that they could meet. She turns to the girls in the club, saying that she is hunting witches and decided to get rid of them because they pose a threat to Hanoka. Hanoka watches the girls struggling to get free and asks Ayaka to at least remove their gags so that they can talk. Ayaka does so and says that she planned to finish them off early. But since one of them escaped, she decided to use the others as bait. Hanoka approaches Tampopo and asks why they are after him. Tampopo replies that it's no surprise that Ayaka didn't tell him anything, and that, in short, they want his body and something inside it. Hanoka blushes, unsure if she understood correctly, but Ayaka warns him not to take what his enemies say literally. Tampopo reminds him that they still need to capture the last member of the group, and at that moment a dark, viscous liquid begins to drip from the ceiling, enveloping the two. From within the liquid, May appears and frees her friends. She then kidnaps Hanoka and goes through the floor to a room below, leaving the others to face Ayaka. May celebrates her escape with her target, forgetting that she is not the main villain but rather comic relief in the plot. Ayaka destroys the floor, appears with the other witches who have already been defeated and goes down to May. Seeing her approaching, May threatens to release her pet wolf to bite Hanoka's neck. Ayaka tells him not to worry, promises to end everything in seconds and keeps walking. May makes the wolf bite Hanoka's neck, but Ayaka sets it on fire and kicks it away, freeing Hanoka. To everyone's surprise, it is Ayaka who is injured, with a bite on her own neck. May runs away and takes the others with her. Later, Hanoka wakes up in Ayaka's room and realizes that she is wearing a scarf around her neck. Even though it is summer, she apologizes and says that she wanted him to live a peaceful life. But as long as the witches of the tower keep coming after him, that won't be possible. She states that in order for him to return to a normal life, they need to take action and defeat whoever is behind everything. Although she doesn't know who it is yet, Hanoka reflects on everything, feels guilty that she got hurt because of him, and asks her to make him her apprentice. He says that he doesn't want her to face everything alone anymore. Meanwhile, at a coffee shop, the school principal and Ayaka's mother, Kazune, meets her old rival Kronwire after more than 130 years. Kronwire comments that he has discovered that Medusa's students have been in conflict with hers, and suggests that maybe it's time for her to join in too. Over the weekend, Ayaka calls Hanoka asking to meet him. He thinks it's a date, but in reality she wants to tell him the truth about the witches. They walk together to school, but first stop at a diner. Along the way, Ayaka explains that there are two types of witches: workshop witches and tower witches. Workshop witches are responsible for protecting the world by creating places where people can live and gather. They ensure that magic is used for good and keep their workshops running in various sectors. On the other hand, tower witches ignore the rules and use magic selfishly, often to the detriment of others. Ayaka says that if anyone falls into their hands, the world could end. After the explanation, they enter the diner and take a break. A waitress approaches and speaks to Ayaka in a high-pitched voice. Ayaka listens attentively, despite appearing irritated, and the girl informs her that Chronery is in town and that more tower witches are showing up. Hanoka realizes that this waitress is the vice president of the school's student council and also a workshop witch. After they finish their meal, they head to a mall and Ayaka buys clothes. While waiting, Hanoka sees a girl helping a lost child and approaches. The girl recognizes him from the notes he is carrying, kicks the child away and jumps on Hanoka with a sword, revealing herself to be a witch from the tower. Her friends appear and attack Ayaka. Ayaka responds with a fire spell and protects Hanoka. One of the enemy witches pulls out a gun and starts shooting, but Ayaka uses a magic cloak to protect herself and retaliates with an even stronger fire attack, defeating them all. She picks up Hanoka in her arms and the two escape from the place. After that, they head to the school. Hanoka apologizes for getting her into so much trouble and asks if it wouldn't be better to seal him or lock him up. Ayaka replies that he doesn't need to worry and promises to protect him forever. After that, Ayaka tells Hanoka to try hard in her training because being her apprentice won't be easy. Hearing this, Hanoka feels happy and decides to become stronger. Soon they arrive at the school, where Ayaka reveals that the school is actually one of the workshops. Then, she takes him to the principal's office and introduces him to her mother, Kazune. Kazune scolds Ayaka for causing destruction in the mall and questions how a workshop witch can act so irresponsibly. She then explains that it is customary in the workshops for witches to introduce their apprentices to the master on the first day, and so she asked Ayaka to bring him. The next day, Ayaka takes Hanoka to a training session. Along the way, they are ambushed by Tanpopo and his companions. Kana asks if it is a good idea to attack Ayaka, since she is practically invincible, but Tanpopo decides to go with the direct attack tactic without thinking twice. Ayaka asks Hanoka to watch carefully and then throws all of them into the air like dolls. Hanoka, however, learns nothing from this. Later, upon returning to school, Hanoka opens his locker and is hit by a barrage of hate mail and threats. Among the items, there is even a voodoo doll representing him. Ayaka comments that it must be the work of her admirers, but assures them that they will not hurt him again. Even so, Hanoka feels the contemptuous looks of everyone around her. As he sits next to her, receives help with her studies, participates in pairs with her in physical activities, and even walks with her to and from school. At the end of classes, Hanoka prepares to practice magic, but Ayaka accompanies him to the bus stop and says that she knows he is tired, so they will rest that day. They get on the bus, but during the journey Ayaka notices a magical fish flying by the window and sees that the destination of the bus changes to end of the line. She stands up and turns around, noticing that Noir is sitting in the back, the bus is empty, the driver has disappeared, and the vehicle is moving with her magic. Ayaka tells Hanoka to stay still and confronts Noir, who approaches and introduces himself. Ayaka prepares to cast a fire spell, but Noir stops her using his magic. She then casts a powerful spell against Ayaka, but as expected, there is not even a scratch. Hanoka, not understanding how powerful Ayaka is, tries to defend her by standing in front. Noir observes his attitude and comments on his foolishness, explaining that no one will be able to hurt Ayaka. Soon after, she advances and pierces Hanoka's stomach with a blade. Hanoka falls to her knees and begins to cry, but Noir tells him to stop acting, saying that it doesn't hurt and that he should get up. Hanoka realizes that he really doesn't feel pain and his body is intact. Then, he sees Ayaka falling to the ground, bleeding in the same place where he was hit. Crenoir explains that there is an ability called damage transfer, where any injury caused to him will be transferred to Ayaka as long as they are close. She goes on to explain that this is possible because Ayaka has made a contract with him, allowing her to use the power within him to become an invincible witch, in exchange for the responsibility of protecting him. Crenoir says that if he wants to save her, he must release more power by giving up the energy within him. She refers to a spirit similar to that of a sealed beast, like the one found in certain legendary heroes. Crenoir offers him a magic bullet and says that if he wants to awaken his true power, he must swallow it. She tries to force the magic bullet into him, but Ayaka reacts, releasing green flames and pushing her away. Ayaka explains that for a while, she will need to transform into something different. She channels Hanoka's magical energy and assumes an even more powerful form, with an imposing appearance and flaming powers similar to those of a dragon. With this power, she easily defeats Crenoir, breaking through the barriers and striking his neck. Even so, Crenoir retreats and runs away, leaving the two at the bus stop. Hanoka wakes up first and notices that Ayaka's wound is gone, but she has not yet woken up. He takes her to the hospital, where the nurse tells her that she is just exhausted and will wake up soon. After that, Hanoka returns home and finds the magic bullet in his pocket. He decides to hide it in the drawer, saving it for emergencies. He also thinks about the contract between Ayaka and him, and if, somehow, they already knew each other before meeting at school. The next day, Ayaka reserves the entire gymnasium to train him. She gives him a wizard uniform and begins to explain its functions. Ayaka asks him to try to jump high. Hanoka obeys and is surprised to feel his body lighter, managing to jump almost to the ceiling of the gymnasium. Ayaka catches him in her arms as he falls and challenges him to do the same. Hanoka manages to lift her in his arms and realizes that she too is very light. Ayaka explains that this is an effect of the magic cloak. Soon after, she extends her hand and makes a gesture with her wrist, making a magic broom appear. She explains that these brooms are stored in the cloaks and can be summoned with that gesture. Hanoka tries to repeat, but fails, becoming frustrated. At that moment, Ayaka's alarm goes off, and she tells him that their time is up. Many students enter the gym for school practice. Hanoka panics, afraid of being seen wearing that strange outfit, but no one seems to notice him. He wonders if he has become invisible, but Ayaka explains that the cloaks have an enchantment that prevents ordinary people from seeing them and makes them instinctively avoid them. After that, they leave and Ayaka asks if Hanoka is afraid of heights. Without waiting for an answer, she grabs him and flies up into the sky on her broomstick. She says that they will practice flying until he can summon his own broomstick, and explains that workshop witches patrol the areas like this to ensure the safety of the sector. She also mentions that there are 5 powerful witches at the school who do this patrol regularly. After a long flight, during which Hanoka even dozes off, they return to school. Along the way, Hanoka sees a child being mugged by other students and asks Ayaka to stop. Ayaka responds that this type of situation should be resolved by the police and that witches should not interfere in the affairs of ordinary humans, since they need to keep their existence a secret. Hanoka does not accept this justification. He summons his broom and jumps from the sky, nearly killing himself on the way down, but manages to hit the bullies, who fall to the ground. The bullies gather and start beating him, but Ayaka arrives in time and incinerates them with her magic. Hanoka reminds him of the rule not to attack civilians, but Ayaka reveals that they were witches, which is why they were able to see him even though he was wearing the cloak. The girl who was being mugged was a classmate of Kasui, Hanoka's younger sister, and since she is not a witch, she did not see anything that happened. Meanwhile, in the city of Rothenburg, Medusa is imprisoned under the strictest security possible. Somehow, Medusa manages to break the seal and escape from prison. The first people she decides to visit are her most loyal students, Tanpopo's group. Before this encounter happens, Tanpopo and her companions are sitting in a restaurant, trying to come up with a plan to capture Hanoka and defeat Ayaka. The task seems difficult, since one of them is practically invincible, and the other emits some kind of energy that keeps Ayaka always by his side, as if if she were an instinctive guardian. During the conversation, Rin suggests that they stop attacking Ayaka directly and instead wait for the right moment to capture Hanoka alone. They agree with this strategy. But before they leave the restaurant, Kimura approaches and says he would like to participate in the plan. The next morning, Hanoka wakes up and goes downstairs to get ready for school. His sister, Kasumi, greets him and helps him fix his hair with a comb and a blow dryer. While doing so, she asks him about the call he received from a girl the previous weekend. Hanoka doesn't want to admit that the prettiest girl in school calls him master, so he makes up an excuse and says it was just a warning call from the class. Because her number came before his, Kasumi is suspicious and asks why he ran off right after the call. He tries to come up with another excuse, but starts to sweat. She threatens to blow dry his hair at full power if he doesn't tell her the truth. She then says that she knows he went out with Ayaka and that she's heard rumors since they go to the same school. Kasumi comments that she's constantly teased because her brother monopolizes the school princess. She asks what exactly the relationship between them is. Hanoka doesn't know what to say, but at that moment, their mother, Kamachi, calls for breakfast and Kasumi spares him, saying that she will talk to him in the bedroom at night. Meanwhile, Ayaka is waiting for Hanoka at the bus stop and is ambushed by 3 witches from Tanpopo's group. Hanoka, after finishing her coffee, remembers that she had arranged to meet Ayaka early and runs towards the bus stop. On the way, he stumbles into a trap set by Tanpopo and his toy soldiers. They trap him and pin him to the ground. Tanpopo explains that, at that moment, his companions are attacking Ayaka because they have discovered her weakness. Kimura had revealed that Ayaka's invincibility depends on her proximity to Hanoka. By separating the two, Ayaka would become vulnerable. 2 toy soldiers are thrown away by a blow of great force. Tanpopo wonders what happened, but then looks up and sees a large toy bear holding his soldiers. The person responsible for this is Kasumi, who is also a workshop witch. Angry at seeing her plan being ruined, Tanpopo summons a giant soldier, and the 2 titans, the rabbit and the bear, begin to fight. The battle continues with intense blows, until the rabbit attacks the bear's eyes and changes the course of the fight. They exchange attacks as if they were in a wrestling match. The bear tries to throw the rabbit to the ground, spins and throws it as if it were a special attack. The rabbit counters with spiked gloves and poisonous gas. In the end, the 2 attack each other at the same time, but the bear manages to hit first and knocks the rabbit to the ground. Soon after, a Tyrannosaurus skeleton appears and charges. Kasumi turns to see what it is and realizes that it is Rin with her dead pet. Tanpopo and Rin surround Kasumi, starting a 2-on-1 fight. Kasumi then activates her secret technique and transforms the bear into a colossal titan. She crushes her enemies under her feet and causes more destruction than many wars. After the fight, she gets off the bear and approaches Hanoka, who watched everything sitting down. Wishing she had popcorn in her hands, Hanoka asks what all that was about and Kasumi responds by asking who he thinks protected him all these years when Ayaka was not around. Upon hearing Ayaka's name, Hanoka grabs Kasumi's hand and tells her that they need to save her. Kasumi points to Ayaka, who is sitting on the bear's paw reading a book, and tells her that she doesn't need to be saved, just admired. Hanoka runs over to Ayaka and thanks her for being okay and for fighting for him. Seeing this, Kasumi gets angry and asks why he isn't thanking her. Kasumi then argues with Ayaka, reminding her that they had agreed that Kasumi would protect Hanoka on weekends and holidays, while Ayaka would take care of him at school and on the way. But Ayaka took him out the previous weekend, breaking their agreement. As the two argue over custody of Hanoka, he realizes that Kasumi lied that morning when she said she didn't know anything and was being teased. Kasumi admits that she was just teasing him, like any younger sister would do. She then tells them that the principal informed her that there are over 30 tower witches in the city, which indicates that something very big is about to happen. Elsewhere, Kazane turns on the TV and sees half of the city destroyed by the confrontation between Kasumi and Tanpopo, and wonders how much more she will have to spend to repair the damage. Back in the city, Ayaka comments that she Kamachi may want to protect Hanoka all the time and suggests that they live together. At the same time, Crenoir prepares a plan and orders his subordinate to capture all the tower witches in the city and take them to his base. At the same time, Kazane receives a call from Rothenburg informing her that Medusa has escaped. The next day, Ayaka visits Hanoka and Kasami's mother to ask for permission to live with Hanoka full-time. To everyone's surprise, Kamachi immediately agrees and begins to tell a story from her youth. She says that when she was in high school, she became friends with a strong girl known as Dragontooth. This girl was Kazane, Ayaka's mother. The two became so close that they promised to get married, but since that wasn't possible at the time, they decided to marry men and have their children marry in the future. This means that Ayaka and Hanoka were promised before they were even born. Upon hearing this, Kasami refuses to accept it and says that she won't let her brother go. Kamachi scolds her, saying that she needs to grow up since she's always asking her brother for help with everything. Kasami insists that this is a younger sister's right. When arguments fail, Kamachi holds her down and tells Hanoka to pack her bags and leave. After that, Ayaka and Hanoka leave together, and she asks if he's okay with living with her. Hanoka replies that there isn't a man in the world who wouldn't accept that. He comments that everything seems familiar to him, as if they've already experienced something like that. Ayaka completes the thought by saying that it feels like they met a long time ago, but they can't remember when it was. She says that her memories are also confused, but the difference is that she still remembers her mission to protect him with her own life. She believes that someone with similar powers did this to them on purpose. Soon the car arrives. The driver opens the door, and Hanoka realizes that being the director's daughter also means that Ayaka is extremely rich. They arrive at her house, or rather, a true empire. They go in and are greeted by dozens of maids. Ayaka says that her room is on one of the upper floors, so they'll take the elevator. During the ascent, Hanoka wonders who lives in a house with over 40 floors. When they arrive, they open the door to find 3 maids turned to stone, with Medusa waiting behind them. Ayaka pushes Hanoka into the elevator and tells him that he should stay on the 12th floor. Then she closes the door. Ayaka transforms into her combat form and begins to fight Medusa with all her strength. Outside, Hanoka wonders why Ayaka told him to leave, since she always insists that he stay close. He concludes that the enemy must be very strong, and that if he moves away, Ayaka will lose her invulnerability. So, instead of obeying, he decides to do what he always does, the opposite. At that moment, the elevator door melts and Ayaka falls to the ground. She asks Hanoka to escape using the broom, since in battles he only serves as a target. But Medusa does not intend to let them go and uses her curse to turn Ayaka to stone. Hanoka begs her to release her, saying she will obey, but Medusa refuses, stating that she is not a fool like him. Hanoka remembers that she still has the magic bullet in her pocket, which she brought when she decided to live with Ayaka. She takes it out, undoes the seal, and releases the power that lies within her. Suddenly, a figure appears in the room, a white-haired woman with a vampiric appearance. She introduces herself as the White Princess Evermillion. Medusa charges straight at Evermillion, but is hit by an attack that throws her out of the building along with the entire structure, revealing only a fraction of that entity's strength. At the same time, Kazane watches through the window, trying to relax after a hard day's work, and witnesses her $1,000,000 mansion being completely destroyed. She concludes that it can only be Medusa's work, and immediately orders her assistant to gather all the witches in the city to hunt down the person responsible. Meanwhile, Evermillion explains to Hanoka that Ayaka was turned to stone because he didn't truly believe in her strength. To break this curse, he needs to rekindle the trust and feelings he has for her. In other words, he needs to kiss her, like in a classic fairy tale. After saying this, Evermillion disappears, asking only that he avoid calling her again too often. Soon after, Medusa returns to the fight and brings with her students from Tanpopo's group. Hanoka kisses Ayaka and undoes the petrification spell. From that moment on, he never leaves her side during the battle. Ayaka defeats Tanpopo's group with a single attack and then confronts Medusa in direct combat. The two fight on equal terms, and when Medusa tries to turn her into stone again, Ayaka breaks the spell with her fire magic and willpower. During the fight, Hanoka begins to feel very tired and falls asleep, while still hugging Ayaka in the middle of the sky. Later, he wakes up in the school infirmary and sees Ayaka sitting next to him. He asks if it was all a nightmare, but she confirms that it was real. She then pulls back the curtain and reveals that Medusa and her students are resting in the beds next to them. Hanoka panics, but Ayaka says that now they will not attack them anymore. After that, she closes the curtain and kisses Hanoka as a way of paying him back. With Ayaka's house destroyed, they decide to return to Hanoka's house. Kasumi leaves that night to answer a call from Kazune, while Ayaka and Hanoka meet up with Kamachi, his mother. The next morning, Kasumi returns after spending the night trying to find Medusa, but without success. She decides to visit Hanoka in his room and catches him with Ayaka sitting on him, examining his seal. Kasumi is furious when she discovers that her mother allowed Ayaka to stay at their house. At the breakfast table, Kasumi treats Ayaka rudely. Kamachi feels dejected by the situation. Hanoka scolds Kasumi for being an ungrateful daughter and demands that she apologize, but Kamachi is already too shaken. She retreats to bed and stops talking to anyone. Hanoka calls in sick and leaves for school before the others. At school, the student council and Ayaka's fan club meet. The president is furious that it has been 2 weeks since Hanoka got too close to the princess and no one has done anything about it. She pressures the vice president, but the vice president refuses to act, reminding her that Ayaka forbade anyone from hurting Hanoka. The president, annoyed, turns to the advisor teacher, Kaiokairo, saying that he only holds the position because he didn't have the courage to refuse and threatening to remove him if he doesn't do something about it. Later, Kaiokairo calls Ayaka and Hanoka into the science classroom. He reveals that he is the student council advisor and is being pressured because Hanoka is causing trouble. He explains that since her first year, Ayaka has been a public figure at the school, elected every year as the model student at the cultural festival. The school chooses a standout student based on looks, academic performance, sports, charisma, and other criteria. This student is called the school's prince or princess. Kaiokairo claims that the problem arises when rumors arise involving this figure, especially if a boy is involved. Hanoka tries to explain that the rumors don't reflect the truth, but Kaiokairo says that it doesn't matter because Ayaka doesn't belong to him. She belongs to the school. He then asks Hanoka to step away. Hanoka becomes sad, but Ayaka tells him to stop looking at her. She explains that the school's tradition arose from an ancient legend about an angel who descended from heaven and attended classes among humans. Therefore, the title of princess carries great prestige. Kaiokairo confirms and explains the school's hierarchy. The headmistress is at the top, followed by the princess, then the student council, the teachers, and the ordinary students. As the headmistress' daughter, Ayaka already holds the top 2 positions, and no one can tell her what she should or shouldn't do. However, he adds that doing so could lead to her expulsion. Ayaka says that she has a plan and that she just needs to speed it up. Kaiokairo feels relieved to hear this and says that now they will get to the real reason why he called them. He uses a magic tool and teleports Hanoka with him to another dimension. There, he takes out a sphere that looks like the magic bullet that Cronoir had given him earlier. He says that this is an inferior copy and that the original must have caused discomfort when Hanoka ingested it. Hanoka is surprised that he knows about the existence of the bullet, since only Ayaka knew about it. Kaiokairo explains that they are here because Hanoka used one of these bullets to summon the white princess that lives inside him. He reveals that there are 5 seals in total, and one of them has already been broken because of this. He fears that the headmistress will soon become Hanoka's enemy. The Witch Council entrusted Kazune with his guardianship precisely because of his exceptional strength, but this depended on keeping the seals intact. Now that one of them has been broken, the others will inevitably fall as well, and nothing can stop that. The only solution would be to seal Hanoka away with the headmistress's magic, but luckily she is still busy dealing with Medusa and is unaware of the situation. However, she will soon discover both the seals and the fact that Medusa is in hiding. Kaiokairo claims that he only wants to help him and says that if it weren't for Ayaka, he would be Hanoka's guardian. He proposes that Hanoka accompany him and abandon Ayaka. Before Hanoka can respond, Ayaka breaks through the dimensional barrier, attacks Kaiokairo, and pins him to the ground. She rescues Hanoka and takes him away. Kaiokairo, however, survives by using a substitution potion spell and escapes. Afterwards, Ayaka takes Hanoka to the school's sound room and has him announce a call for all students to gather in the gym. There, she takes the stage and, for the first time, shows interest in the school's political affairs. She gives a vibrant speech about the future of the school and declares that she is removing the current student council president, naming Hanoka as the new president. She herself takes over as vice president and promotes the former vice president to second vice president. Later, Hanoka gives her introductory speech and admits that many people don't like him, but promises to earn everyone's respect over time. Meanwhile, Kasumi can't accept that Ayaka dominates her brother and decides to take action. She sets a trap, follows the two after school, and surprises them when they enter a toy store. Hanoka goes out alone to get some air, and she kidnaps him using her bear. She throws a car at Ayaka, knocks her out with injections, and equips the bear with an airplane module made by dismantling half of the house. She declares that she will run away with Hanoka to live together in the forest. Kasumi says that she heard everything the teacher said, and that soon the principal and her daughter will be his enemies. At that moment, a huge shadow appears above them. Looking up at the sky, they both see a dragon flying over them, ridden by none other than the Princess of Flames. Ayaka decides to show who the real protagonist of the story is and starts casting fire spells from above. Kasumi tries to dodge the attacks, which results in the destruction of half the city. In the end, the bear crashes into a building and everyone falls. Ayaka jumps and saves everyone by breaking the fall. After that, she takes them back home and puts them to rest. Later that night, Hanoka wakes up and apologizes to Ayaka for her sister's actions. Ayaka replies that she doesn't care, since all Kasumi did was throw a car at her and give her some injections to make her sleep. In fact, Ayaka says that she admires Kasumi for being such a protective sister and asks if she should try acting like a little sister too. Hanoka replies that if she did, she would be the big sister. The two toy with this idea all night until Ayaka gets tired and falls asleep. Hanoka lets her rest on her bed, and as he tidies up, he notices that the toys he bought for her and Kasumi were destroyed during the fight the day before, which makes him sad. Meanwhile, Kamachi answers a call from Kazune, who says he's coming to visit them to talk to Ayaka and their son. The next morning, Kazune arrives and leaves with Kamachi and Kasumi to go shopping. Ayaka wakes up early and makes breakfast for herself and Hanoka. When Hanoka wakes up and sees Ayaka in the kitchen, he thinks about how beautiful she is and sits down with her to eat. In the background, Tenpopo and his group, who are now staying at Hanoka's house along with Medusa, observe the situation. The girls question Medusa about why they are so passively obeying Ayaka. Medusa replies that they lost the battle fairly, and, by the rules, they must follow the orders of the winner. Furthermore, as long as the objectives are the same, she sees no need to act before the right time. Still, she allows them to attempt to capture Hanoka when Ayaka is not around. In view of this, the group goes upstairs and waits outside the room, waiting for Ayaka to leave. But to their surprise, the princess does not sleep for a second and stays by Hanoka's side the entire night. Then she gets up and goes to prepare breakfast. Apparently, she does not need to sleep as much as a normal human being, which reveals yet another peculiarity about her nature. In the living room, Ayaka and Hanoka talk about Kazune and Kamachi, and soon after they go out together to collect clothes from the clothesline, as it starts to rain. At that moment, Kazune and the others return home and Ayaka goes to greet them. Hanoka goes into the bathroom to dry off and ends up running into Mei and the other girls, who come out of the shower and accuse him of being too smart. They capture him and take him to the main hall, where everyone is gathered. Kazune puts Kamachi and Kasumi to sleep with a spell and tells Ayaka that he will capture them to find out where Medusa is. The two summon their brooms, but instead of running away, Ayaka turns around and confronts her mother. Kazune tells Hanoka that he needs to convince her to stop this selfish behavior. Hanoka remembers Kayokairo's words and realizes that Ayaka really was hiding Medusa. He decides to trust her and says that they cannot let themselves be captured. Ayaka agrees, calls Medusa, and says it is time to fulfill the agreement. Medusa appears and bites her, which causes the two to merge. Hanoka loses consciousness and has a vision of the moment when the two made the contract during the attack on Ayaka's house. In the agreement, Ayaka would receive power to fight against her mother, and Medusa would have a successor to transfer her strength to, in the form of the princess. Ayaka promised to protect Medusa and her students until the right time. Kazune still doesn't understand the reason for the fusion and speaks without thinking. Medusa mocks her and the two start a battle. Kazune attacks with her broom. Ayaka blocks it and tries to turn her into stone with her gaze. Kazune grabs her daughter by the collar and pushes her to the ground. Despite this, Ayaka manages to turn her into a stone statue, gets up and starts to walk away, apologizing. Kazune breaks the seal with sheer force of will, kicks Ayaka, and grabs her again. She says that one hit is enough to leave her gasping, because her invulnerability was nullified when she fused with Medusa, an entity considered impure by Evermillion. She says that she will finish Ayaka off right there, but Hanoka uses her power to switch places with her and takes the blow in her place. Sometime later, he wakes up trapped in a cell next to Ayaka. She tries to melt the metal bars with magic, but it doesn't work. She explains that they are in one of her mother's punishment chambers and that the fusion with Medusa has already been undone. Medusa must be being interrogated right now and their secret will be revealed. She reveals that her mother always said that even if she died, Ayaka should never allow Hanoka's seals to be broken. As long as the seals were intact, she could guarantee his protection. But now the seals are breaking, and Hanoka has become a threat. The only way out is to defeat Kazune. Ayaka says that her mother is fair, and if she is defeated, she will accept the result and join them. Hanoka remembers how easily they were defeated by her, and wonders how they can defeat her. But Ayaka claims that there is a way, and it involves Hanoka's power. Meanwhile, at school, Kazune plays shogi with Cranoir and comments on Medusa. She says that she was excited to torture the serpent, but witches from the Rothenburg workshop arrived with official orders to take her into custody. She gives Medusa up against her will, and while drinking her tea, she sees the school building explode. Looking down, she sees Ayaka and Hanoka standing on the rubble. She flies up to them and asks how many times she has to tell them to stop destroying buildings. Ayaka responds by pointing her sword and saying that she will defeat her. Kazune orders her to stop, put on her uniform, and go home. She scolds them both for escaping from prison and tells them that they will have to help her clean up the mess the next day. Ayaka and Hanoka return home and realize that Kazune has not yet discovered anything about the seals. They conclude that, for now, everything ended well. That night, they sleep together, but nothing happens between them because they are close. Hanoka has a strange dream where she sees memories of Ayaka's past. She sees the moment when Kazune hired the daughters of two witches to be Ayaka's friends and take care of her. These two students became the first members of the princess's group of admirers, holding the positions of third chair and vice president of the student council. Kane and Toko quickly became friends with Ayaka and realized that she did not know how to interact with people, but was excellent at everything she did, both in studies and sports. Over time, they began to admire her and fell in love with her personality, which led to her being named the school princess. One day, Ayaka saw Hanoka walking by with her sister and felt something different. She went to her mother and told her that she had found the person she was destined to protect. That was how her journey as Hanoka's guardian began. The next morning, Kasumi goes to the kitchen, trying to understand what happened the day before. When she opens the door, she finds the breakfast table surrounded by the Tampopo group. Kazune let them go, since his only interest was Medusa. With no place to stay, they decided to stay at Hanoka's house, which greatly bothers Kasumi. After getting ready, Kasumi goes upstairs to wake her brother, and, once again, finds Ayaka standing over him, now dressed as a nurse, under the pretense of checking the seals. After having breakfast, they all go to school together. Everything seems to be back to normal, with Hanoka's locker once again full of hate mail and requests for him to leave the student council. He continues to be a disaster in class, even though he tries to get the answers right. At lunchtime, Hanoka and Ayaka go down to the cafeteria, but hear the sound of breaking glass. They run to see what happened and find students destroying everything around them. The school quickly becomes a no-rules zone, with students riding motorbikes and selling cigarettes in the hallways. Honoka asks what's going on, and Ayaka says it looks like a riot is starting. Tampopo intervenes and claims that, as the student council president, it's Honoka's fault. At that moment, everyone sees Toko being pushed to the ground by a girl named Raymond. She hands Honoka a letter, summoning him, as the council president, to come alone to the gym at 2:30 p.m. The message clearly doesn't convey the idea that it will be a friendly conversation. Toko says that during her night shift, she saw the former student council president enter a bar accompanied by Rhiannon. At that time, she allegedly said that Honoka took her position by force and now rules the school like a tyrant. Ayaka signals Toko to meet her after school, and during gym class, she reveals that Rhiannon is one of the 5 witches in charge of protecting and patrolling the school. Rhiannon was known as the Bear Killer because she once strangled a tiger named Lucky Bear that had escaped from the zoo. About 2 months earlier, she was suspended for causing trouble. During lunch, Honoka mentions that she imagined the principal would be furious about the destruction at the school, but Tampopo replies that she saw Cronwar in the hallways, and it seems that the principal is out of town on business, leaving Cronwar in charge for now. Everyone knows that Cronwar doesn't care one bit about what happens to the school. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Honoka decides to go to the gym alone, taking with her Ayaka's advice on how to fight Rhiannon. Upon entering the building, she sees that the gym has been transformed into an arena surrounded by swords. With a crowd of cheering students around, Honoka tries to resolve the situation with words, but Rhiannon accuses him of using her best friend and trying to destroy her reputation. She then lands a punch straight to his face, knocking him to the ground. Honoka gets up, but Rhiannon announces that he will punish him in front of the entire school. She then attacks him repeatedly until he falls again. Then, she grabs him by the tie and prepares her final blow. However, this was the moment Honoka had been waiting for. As Ayaka had predicted, he activates his power, gains an increase in attributes, pushes Rhiannon and knocks her down. Getting on top of her, he considers striking her to end it once and for all, but decides against it, believing that there is still value in kindness. Just then, the lights go out and Ayaka appears, accompanied by Tampopo and her group. Rhiannon easily defeats the 3, but Ayaka knocks Rhiannon down with a single blow to the face. Ayaka then has the other girls lift Honoka up in a victory pose using their cloaks of concealment before turning the lights back on, making it appear that Honoka has defeated Rhiannon. It is then revealed that Ayaka had planned the whole thing a week earlier with the former president, promising to reinstate her to the student council if she helped increase Honoka's popularity. The plan got a little out of hand when she provoked Rhiannon too much, but in the end, the results were excellent. Honoka is now considered the hero who defeated the Bear Slayer. His name is reaching the top of the search trends, and content creators are reacting to his victory. He even receives praise from well-known streamers, and all of this strengthens his image as president. Days later, Ayaka takes Honoka to the top of a very tall building and tells him that she will finally train him to fight with magic. Honoka asks why the change, since before she refused to teach him because it was dangerous. Ayaka replies that she knows he has been training in secret and hiding things from her, which bothers her. She then summons a fire familiar and tells him that he must face it with his own magic. The familiar breathes fire and Honoka falls. Ayaka asks him to summon his own familiar, but he just looks at her confused, not knowing what to do. The familiar attacks him again, and he hurts his elbow. Ayaka stops training and runs to help him. Honoka gets up, pushes Ayaka lightly, and asks her to be a stricter teacher. Ayaka watches him for a moment and then picks him up before throwing him off the building. She tells him that he needs to summon a flying familiar or face the consequences. During the fall, he is attacked by the fire familiar while Ayaka follows him on her broom. Honoka tries to focus on what matters most to him, and just before he hits the ground, he remembers the dream in which Ayaka wore a nurse's outfit. He summons a giant avatar of Ayaka in that uniform, proving that he is capable of using powerful magic. The avatar punches the building in front of him, and reveals Kaiokairo having tea with Cronoir. Cronoir comments that this spell could only have been cast if Honoka had broken the second seal. She then asks where Kazune is, who has left her bored. Meanwhile, Honoka falls asleep from exhaustion and Ayaka takes him home. Meanwhile, Kazune investigates an ancient explosive rune in an underground tunnel and is approached by Rinin, who says he learned of its location from Toko. Kazune asks what she is doing there, and Rinin explains that a witch calling herself the messenger of the tower appeared and said she has captured everyone in the city as hostages. A week later, Ayaka and Honoka go to school to take their exams. Kazune is still missing, and they meet the messenger, who introduces herself as the Witch Weekend. Kazune claims she knows about the bomb and understands that she is there to negotiate custody of Honoka. Weekend confirms that she wants the boy and his powers, but says she did not come to negotiate. She explains that normally, when a witch attacks another, the conflict is direct. However, they cannot attack ordinary humans because of the large-scale protective barrier that Kazune has cast over the city. Every time someone is injured, part of Kazune's mana is consumed to protect them. Thanks to her enormous reserve of energy and recovery ability, she can maintain this barrier indefinitely. Weekend then wonders what would happen if the entire city were attacked at once. She believes that Kazune's mana would run out, allowing Honoka to be easily captured. With this, she activates several explosive runes scattered throughout the city. As predicted, everything falls into ruins, but no civilians are hurt. Kazune, however, is knocked unconscious due to having used up all his energy. Weekend reveals that she manipulated Medusa and Cronoir to drive Kazune away, leaving the way clear. She orders Kazune to be taken away and locked up, as it would take at least a week to recover her mana, which would be enough time to play with the students. At school, Ayaka notices the explosions, grabs Honoka, and flees to the underground, where the witch's workshop is located. There, they meet Kasumi, who runs to hug her brother. They are greeted by Toko, Rinin, and other witches responsible for protecting the school, including the leader Natsume and a huntress named Itori. Honoka asks what is happening, and Natsume promises to explain. But then, Mi pulls out a gun with sleeping bullets and hits Honoka, making Ayaka faint as well. Kasumi tries to protect them, but Rinin knocks her out with one blow. She explains to Honoka that they need to seal him until they understand Kazune's whereabouts and the enemy's objectives. He finally agrees to listen and accompanies the group to an underground cell with Ayaka. Inside the cell, he notices that the ceiling is very high, with an opening through which fresh air enters. He tries to fly with the broom, but cannot use magic. Ayaka awakens and concludes that her mother has been defeated. At that moment, Itori falls from the ceiling and projects a hologram of Weekend, who says that he has finally found Honoka and is going to get him. Upon seeing her face, Ayaka destroys the toy with an attack, which causes an explosion that opens a hole in the wall. She says that they need to escape and defeat her, even without magic, since the city is in ruins. They climb a staircase for 2 hours and emerge from the tunnel in a mountain outside the city. When they emerge, they are met with a devastating landscape. The entire city is destroyed and in flames. Honoka panics and begins to blame himself, believing that his mother and everyone else died because of him. Ayaka remains firm and tells him that he needs to accept reality and trust that no one died. She begins to explain that when a workshop is created, the leader of the group forms a contract with the heart of the city. By forming this contract with the heart of the city, a powerful barrier is cast over all non-witches. When dangerous situations occur and ordinary people are at risk of being harmed, the city consumes the magic of the contractor to protect them. Basically, the city uses the magic of the witches in the workshop to repair itself from any damage caused by magic. Since the city is destroyed and the contractor has disappeared, no witch in the workshop can use magic until a new contract is formed. So their first objective will be to reach the city center and have Honoka become the new contractor so that the workshop witches can fight back. Meanwhile, Natsume and the others assess the situation and gather all the information available. All the civilians have been evacuated and put to sleep safely. The director is in the hands of the enemy. None of the witches in the workshop can use magic because the city is in ruins, and it will be at least a few more days before any help arrives from headquarters. Furthermore, many of the witches in the workshop have remained missing since the explosion. At that moment, one of the missing witches runs in and reveals that she has well-timed explosives strapped to her body. She tells them that Weekend has captured several of them and is using this as a bargaining chip to force them to hand over Hanoka. They only have half an hour to comply with the demands, or they will all explode. Meanwhile, Kasumi teams up with Tampopo and her group and begins to watch Weekend, who is positioned on the school grounds with several witches from the workshop around her, all of whom also have bombs strapped to their bodies. Tampopo asks Kasumi what they should do, and she tells her that, at the moment, they are the only witches capable of using magic. She states that she will make sure that they deserve the shelter they have received in her home, in the tunnels leading to the heart of the city. Ayaka and Hanoka continue to advance until they are intercepted by Gibraltar, one of Weekend's allies. Gibraltar uses his magic to form a stone golem and attacks the two with massive rock arms. He grabs Ayaka and prepares to deliver the final blow, but Ayaka counters with a kick to the face. Gibraltar believes that a normal kick cannot penetrate his stone armor, but Ayaka has been trained in martial arts by her mother. Even without using magic, she easily defeats Gibraltar and continues advancing with Hanoka. In the underground workshop, Natsume tries to manually disarm the bombs, but with only 18 minutes left, they decide to confront Weekend directly. At the same time, Cremora wakes up in her room to see the city completely destroyed. She asks her partner what happened, and he tells her that the witch named Weekend is responsible, who provided them with information about Hanoka. Cremora understands that if Weekend defeated Kazune, then she is very powerful and will not let the chance to capture Hanoka pass her by. Natsume and the others confront Weekend and demand that she surrender, but she replies that in less than 12 minutes, everyone will be dead anyway. She claims that she is weak, but even if they defeat her, they will not be able to stop the explosions. Kasumi suspects that Weekend is just the negotiator and that someone else is responsible for controlling the bombs. With that in mind, she runs into the building, searching for the real culprit. Meanwhile, Hanoka reaches the heart of the city and follows Ayaka's instructions to form a new contract with her. There are only a few minutes left before the explosions, and Renan and the others start running towards Weekend with their fists raised. At that moment, everyone feels their magic return, as Hanoka successfully completes the contract. They disarm the bombs and knock Weekend to the ground. They capture her and take her to a magical containment cell, but she uses physical grenades hidden under her clothes, breaking the seal and knocking everyone out with the explosion. She protects herself with iron armor under her clothes and escapes with her companion. Then, she activates the remaining explosives, injuring several witches in the workshop, and calls out to Hanoka, provoking him to try to save them if he can. Thanks to the contract, Hanoka can hear her voice and see everyone getting hurt. He decides to fight her using his powers, but Ayaka headbutts him, saying that she will take care of it herself. Meanwhile, Kasumi and the others face Weekend's partner. Kronwar captures Gibraltar and forces her to reveal Weekend's plans and where he is, after knocking Hanoka out. Ayaka takes him to the school infirmary and puts him on a bed to rest. Hanoka begins to dream of old memories about her mother and Ayaka's. But before she can understand anything important, Kaiokairo appears in her dream and takes her back to the parallel dimension. He explains that this is a special realm where the memories of everyone in the city are stored. As a new contractor, Hanoka does not have ordinary dreams, but she accesses this place. Kaiokairo takes him up an elevator and explains that in times of crisis, all non-witch civilians in the city are evacuated to this place. They appear as stars in the sky of that realm. Once the city is restored, they will be released, with their memories erased and edited so that they will not remember anything that happened. Hanoka asks about this memory alteration, and Kaiokairo reveals that as a member of the Mikech family, it is his responsibility to keep the witch's existence a secret. Meanwhile, Kasumi fights Weekend's partner, who has the ability to copy his opponent's magic. The battle becomes a clash of titans, with Kasumi's giant pink bear facing off against the enemy's black bear. The fight is intense, with the two monsters striking each other like uncontrolled beasts. But Kasumi seems to have the upper hand. Even so, they both continue fighting and end up destroying part of the school building with Tampopo and the others inside. Kasumi manages to save one of her allies with her bear, but this gives the enemy the chance to hit her and almost defeat her. At that moment, Medusa appears in her human form and turns the enemy into stone. She then gathers her students and says that she will punish them for failing against such a weak opponent. After that, she runs away while the witches of Rothenburg chase her. In the infirmary, Atori enters and asks Ayaka about Hanoka's condition. Ayaka replies that she has a high fever because she forced her magic when forming the contract with the city. Atori says that she fulfilled her mission and gives information about Kronwar, who is hunting tower witches in the city. She tells Ayaka that she doesn't need to worry about Hanoka. Ayaka thanks him and asks Atori to stay by Hanoka's side while she goes to defeat Weekend and end everything. She grabs her sword and flies to the church, where Weekend is waiting for her. Ayaka immediately attacks, but is repelled by an explosion in the air. Weekend explains that, unlike her and Kazane, he doesn't have any crazy tricks or overpowering abilities, which is why he spent years preparing bombs and spreading them around the city. Now, he can attack them anywhere, at any time, and Ayaka doesn't stand a chance against him. They continue fighting, and Weekend makes the church's roof collapse on Ayaka, who is injured but remains standing, with her fire magic activated. The fight continues with Ayaka managing to defeat her in hand-to-hand combat, but is soon thrown against the door by an explosion. Weekend then reveals several giant mana dolls and uses them to attack Ayaka. At school, Hanoka and Kaiokairo are attacked by another of Weekend's allies, and Kaiokairo uses magic to send Hanoka back to the real world. Hanoka wakes up and talks to Atori about Ayaka, but she puts him back to bed because of his fever. Just then, Atori receives a call from Kaiokairo, who informs him that Weekend has planted a gigantic time bomb inside the realm of memories and that they need to defeat it to defuse everything. Otherwise, everyone who was evacuated to that place will die. Atori decides to help Hanoka and takes him to where Ayaka is. They arrive in time to see her lying on the ground, defeated. Hanoka holds her in her arms and tells her that there is a bomb that will kill everyone and that they need to defeat Weekend, asking her to use his powers. Ayaka does just that and completely defeats Weekend, leaving no room for reaction. Ayaka demands that she hand over the bomb switch, but Weekend responds that it is too late and activates the explosive. With everyone dying before her eyes, Hanoka gets up and tries to use Evermillion's powers once more. Ayaka tries to stop him, but he begins to feel dizzy and faints. In the dream, he meets Evermillion, who scolds him for coming back, even after she told him that he should not use his powers so often. She tells him that she knows why he is there and that he wants to restore all the lives and buildings lost. She claims that this is possible, but demands an equivalent compensation. He asks what he could offer in exchange, and she replies that it would be his life, but reminds him that if she takes his life by contract, Ayaka will die too. Hanoka thinks for a moment, but states that she has no other choice. He forms a contract with Evermillion, offers his life in exchange for the restoration of everything, and releases his power completely. Thus, the city is completely restored, as if the explosions had never happened, and everyone returns to normal. Ayaka hugs him, and he apologizes for having given his own life, and by contract, hers as well. Ayaka replies that she will not let him die so easily. She stands up, calls out to Evermillion, and says that she will offer her own life in his place. Immediately, her magical form disappears, and she falls unconscious to the ground, while Hanoka remains alive. Before he can even mourn, Hanoka is stabbed in the back by Weekend, who has also been restored due to his wish. She says that he ruined her plan, and now all that is left is a knife. She tells him that he doesn't need to cry for Ayaka, because he will be able to see her in the afterlife at that very moment. Hanoka gathers her strength and pushes the knife out of her body. Then, he knocks Weekend down with a punch and sticks the knife in the ground next to her head. He says that he is tired of seeing lives being devalued, and that, no matter how many times she tries to ruin his life, he will always defeat her and stop her plans. After the speech, he faints on top of her because of the wound. Weekend decides to let him live and orders his ally to treat him. She states that there are still a few days left before the end of the week and Kazane's return. As they leave for the hideout, they are intercepted by Kronwar and his partner, who take Weekend away for a walk, while everyone celebrates the return to normality. Hanoka cries over Ayaka's body. Atori enters the room and receives a call from Kaiokairo, who says that everything went well and the mission was accomplished. But Hanoka is devastated and tells him everything that happened. After hearing the story, Kaiokairo says that something doesn't make sense. Normally, only the contractor can fulfill the conditions of the contract. This means that Ayaka Ayaka couldn't have offered her life in exchange for his like that. Hanoka then notices that there is something strange about her body. Although she is not breathing, she is still warm. He says that he would like to try something, and maybe they can bring her back. He asks Otori to create a special magic circle and place Ayaka inside it. He explains that maybe she is like this because he ended the contract between them by force, and that in order to bring her back, it will be necessary to form a new contract. Hanoka cuts her hand, pours some blood on Ayaka's chest, and, although hesitant, kisses her on the forehead. After some time, Ayaka starts breathing again. Hanoka then returns to the dream world and talks to Evermillion and Kaiokairo. He asks what happened. Evermillion tells her that he had made a contract with Ayaka when they were children, and that if Hanoka died or asked for help, she would end the contract between them and let him use the very power that was used to keep her alive. Hanoka restored everything on her own. Since Ayaka broke the contract, she did not have to give up her powers, and the agreement was cancelled. Meanwhile, Crumbwire challenges Weekend to a duel and easily defeats her. She expresses disappointment, as she expected more from someone who caused so much trouble. She considers punishing her, but Kazune arrives and says that since this is a serious case, she will demand custody of the villain. Weekend asks how she is already here, since it should have taken at least 5 more days to recover her mana. Crumbwire explains that the calculations were wrong and that Kazune recovered everything in just 20 hours. Weekend asks why she didn't show up sooner, and Kazune replies that she wanted to let the kids have some fun before coming to sort out the mess. The two then argue over who will have the right to punish Weekend. They exchange powerful blows and prove to be the 2 strongest witches in the series. The fight only lasts a few minutes, but Kazune wins in the end. The next morning, Hanoka wakes up in her bed. Ayaka greets him and tells him to get ready for school. On the way, Hanoka asks if she's okay. Ayaka replies that it will take a while for her magical powers to recover, but that she'll be fine even without them. Soon after, Tanpopo's group shows up and tries to capture him once again. Ayaka shows that she's still the protagonist even without magic by grabbing Tanpopo and Mei by the heads and nearly crushing them with her hands. They apologize for their rude behavior and everything goes back to normal. And so, the first season of Witchcraft Works comes to an end.